Welcome back to Washington Watch. Well, late yesterday, a Louisiana district court judge ordered Louisiana State University to allow a suspended law professor to return to his teaching duties while the university looks into possible violations of school policies related to speech. LSU law professor Ken Levy has been removed from the classroom. He was removed last month after remarks he made during a class lecture that included profanity-laced criticisms against both President Trump and Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry and those who voted for Trump. So what's next in this case, and why is this significant? Joining me now to discuss this is the governor of Louisiana, Governor Jeff Landry. Governor, welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks for joining us.
Tony, thank you for having me.
All right, I shared a few of the details on this. Provide a little more color commentary here without the language.
Yeah, I mean, look, Tony, this is unfortunately what I believe this is a micro look into a macro problem into our universities. This professor completely went into the classroom in a very unprofessional manner, used very vulgar language and explicatives while describing different people. He talked about me. That's irrespective of that. The media is trying to make this about me. It's not about me. It's about his particular conduct. Then he claimed that he had a First Amendment right. And then we found out today, we got a hold. He used to have all of these tests online. And we found out today, finally got a copy of a test that he gave out that basically talks about a 17-year-old having sex with a pumpkin in his hypothet, and then talks about a pedophile, and he talks about how this pedophile is a Republican. And I mean, this is just not the type of conduct that we would expect of a professor, especially even in a law school. So this is a person who holds a law degree and then is teaching law at the Louisiana State University. I really don't know what to say. It is the most...
Governor, I looked over. This is the final exam that he gave to his students. I actually, I read over it, looked at it. I was actually speechless. This is right. It is beyond offensive. It is. I'll just tell you, as a psychology minor, this reveals a perverted mind of the professor, that this should be his focus, of course, projecting it onto Republicans in his narrative, his hypothetical that he gave to his students. But as a law professor, or any professor for that matter, they hold a position of influence in the classroom. And if I understand correctly, as I've read through this, listened to some of the transcript as he was being recorded, is that he intimidated his students. He demands his First Amendment right, his free speech, but he demanded that he not be recorded because he didn't want the students passing on what he was saying behind closed doors.
Well, because that's what liberals do. They demand the First Amendment right on them, but as long as they can impose their will on others. I mean, look, if you are a taxpayer in Louisiana, you need to read this. You need to look at this and ask yourself, do I want my tax dollars going to fund public universities who then hire teachers to use that type of language in that type of way, create hypothets based upon very perverted and twisted demeanor in a classroom setting? I mean, that is, to me, the most offensive thing is that, look, if this was a completely private school and that's what they wanted to do, that's fine. But this is a public university.
But he's hiding behind tenure and free speech. As a tenured professor, he says he has free speech. He has taken this issue to court. A state judge stepped in, and this case is not resolved, but he allowed him to go back to the classroom. Where does LSU stand on this?
Well, you know, the good thing is that LSU seems to be standing on the side of the students and on the side of dignity and on the side of recognizing that in institutional settings, such as educational institutions, you don't have the right to just say anything, just like a person doesn't have a right to go into a movie theater and yell fire. That's the thing we keep missing out of this, is that they're like, well, we have a First Amendment right. You do, Professor. When you are a normal citizen, if you want to go out into the public square, you have a right. If you want to go into the sidewalk, and you have a right to say certain things. But when you have a captured audience, when you are hired by a public university, under which that public university has a conduct, okay, they have a set of standards under which they expect their professors or their professors must adhere to. On top of that, he's a lawyer, so there's a set of professional responsibilities. As lawyers, we have a code of professional responsibility. He could go into the courtroom. This judge is also out of bounds as well. We're going to have to get the First Circuit or the Supreme Court to bring him in bounds. That's nothing that shouldn't surprise you here in the 19th JDC. But again, think about going into the courtroom and speaking like that, or talking that way in front of a judge.
It is beyond the limits. Governor, we're up against a break, but I got a couple more questions for you. Can you stick around for the next segment?
Sure.
Governor, thanks for sticking around in this. So how would he have responded if the same level of intimidating language would have been used back at him?
Well, what's interesting is we found a paper that he wrote just I believe last year or in 2023, under which he said that schools should have the right to discipline teachers who basically support President Trump. He gave this hypothet of teachers who may be supporting conservative causes or who were speaking out in support of Donald Trump. And he made the argument that the school in an educational setting should be able to discipline teachers in that setting, because he said that those were radical ideas. I have to send you that as well. I forgot about that. But so here we have a professor who says one thing as long as you are in line with his ideology, but when you're not, then he has a different standard.
So, Governor, this is in the court. The court has put a stay on his removal for the classroom, so he's back in the classroom, I think, as of today. What's the next step in the courtroom?
Well, supposedly he should be back in the classroom tomorrow, but it doesn't mean that the university has to put students in that classroom. That's what I would tell them, is that, look, just because he gets to go in the classroom, the judge can't force the students into the classroom. Many of the students have already been reassigned. If they want to go to his class, that would be fine. We took an LSU took an emergency writ to the First Circuit. Look, I think that the First Circuit is going to reverse. They've already reversed it once in a preliminary injunction. And the other thing I think is important, Tony, is to recognize that tenure does not protect him from this type of conduct. And guess what? If tenure protects a professor from this type of conduct, then maybe it's time to abolish tenure.
Yeah. And to your point, Governor, this is the micro of a macro problem, and that's why you're bringing attention to this. Well, one final question for you, as I alluded to on the way out of the last segment, having been in the legislature, having been a part of the budget process there, and knowing how LSU every year would be there wanting more money for their budget, that could be an issue if LSU is not aggressive in reining in this type of behavior in the classroom. I mean, it could affect the budget.
Oh, I can tell you, I spoke to a couple of different legislators who had an educational committee hearing today. I know that Chairman Schlegel, who's on the House education side, they were aghast when I sent them this hypothet, just like you were. You become speechless when you read it. It's almost shocking the mind, shocking your conscience. And I do believe that if the school does not take action, that there's going to be repercussions for allowing professors to act like this in their classrooms.
Yeah, I'm going to put this out. I'm going to take this final exam that this professor gave, so people know what we're talking about. I'm going to put it out online so people can see it after the program. So, Governor, we're going to be tracking this very closely, and again, I appreciate you taking this fight on, because as you've pointed out, and I want our listeners and viewers to understand this. This is not just a Louisiana issue. I'm focusing on it. Yes, it's my home state of Louisiana, but this is a problem in these higher educational institutions across the country, and it's time we address it.
That's correct. It's time to quit indoctrinating and start educating.
All right, Governor Jeff Landry, thanks for joining us. Always great to see you.
Thank you, Tony.